Welcome to Growth Colony, Australia's B2B podcast. I'm Alex from Xgrowth. Each episode, we bring you B2B founders, CMOs, marketing and sales leaders to find out what makes them successful and what was behind their failures, or as we like to call them, hard-learned lessons. If you enjoy the episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and share the pod with a friend you think could get value out of it. And of course, make sure to join the community Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack. That's enough from me though, let's dive right in.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shahin Hoda with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Lubaina Rangwala, the global ABM lead at Thoughtworks, about her approach to ABM across multiple different geographical locations in the APAC region. This is super exciting considering the vast differences between APAC cultures and nations and how these factors impact marketing and ABM campaigns. On that note, let's dive in. Lubaina, thanks for joining us.
Shahin, I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited for this. I mean, APAC is a big thing, and I'm really excited to talk about this because we've had challenges in the past when we run campaigns with our clients, and the differences across the geographies is something to take into consideration, and really hard to scale in some situations, right? If it's like a central team for APAC, and it's sometimes funny that Japan, and we were just making a joke out of it, Japan, Pakistan, and New Zealand all fall under the same umbrella, right?
Yep.
So I'd love to explore and talk about what are some of the geographical teams that you work with for ABM.
Before I talk about the teams, I just want to talk about a little bit about the way I work with them. And we have a, ABM Center of Excellence model. So I belong to the Global Center of Excellence team, and I work with regions, both APAC and globally. And so the APAC region itself are headed by wonderful, marketers and very talented people there. And I wanted to mention this because I know that sometimes when I'm introduced as somebody who's leading something, people forget that there's actually like teams sort of running this. So I just wanted to call that out. Within the APAC region, I work with China, India, Australia, and Southeast Asia, where Singapore is the main market there, and also Thailand and Indonesia. So that's the APAC spread. No Japan or New Zealand there yet, but who knows? Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Okay. All right. Let's talk about differences across the the different teams. As in, how are the teams' approaches different in different parts of APAC to ABM?
That's a really good question, actually. And I think the way the team approaches ABM, it varies based on, there are many things that have an impact on that. It could be the region, the demand that we have from the region itself. So, how the markets are economically, how strong they are. It could also be the ABM capabilities of the team. So, depending on the individual capabilities of the marketers within the team. And it could also be like the relationships that the regional marketing team has with the sales executives within the team. And all of that has a lot of, cultural dependencies as well, and economic ones as well. So with all of the regions that I've mentioned, it's very different. But if I were to I think I can sort of say that with what we're seeing in the market, India and China, at least, when we try to engage with executives in those markets, right, they rely a lot on face-to-face conversations over digital and over online stuff. So we still continue to have those tactics within those markets. Like we may have webinars because with the pandemic, it was impossible to do anything else otherwise. But what happens is, at least within India and China, the power centers are very centralized, very concentrated. So there's a lot of decision-making power with just a few people. And so there's a lot of competition for the mind share for those, select people. And so if you're looking at, industries that people generally target. So if you have, financial services or healthcare or those kind of industries, right? You're talking to like a very, very few set of people. And so everybody is talking to them. And so you've got to really demonstrate value from the start, because again, both India and China, the regions are very, very, value centric more than brand centric. Like they want to see what you can do for them, even though, you're a great brand, you've got a great reputation, that's fine. But what is it that you can show me now? Like, can you show me the value of actually what you will do for me? So that's what, we've kind of observed in those regions. And so the approach of the marketing team there has been to, influence our way up the value chain. So while it is important to talk to the power centers, there's a lot of, influence and word of mouth that they also depend on. So we really have to get to, the second and the third levels of influence of those decision makers as well. So if we were to look at the funnel approach, we look at, influencing more and more people digitally. But at the bottom of the funnel, when we're looking at like more, I guess like conversion related actions, it has to be face to face and it has to be physical. So that's the approach with those two markets. And I'm just being very broad over here. It's so, I think each of them is so complex, and sometimes even the industries within them have so many complexities that it's extremely interesting. But we could spend like well more than an hour to talk about it.
What is the kind of differences that you see? If that is very in India and China, it's very focused on some core decision makers. What are some of the differences that you see in that situation compared to Southeast Asia, Singapore, and Australia?
So within Singapore and Australia, and in contrast to India and China, India and China, we have it's very voluminous, and so the scale is really large. With Australia and Singapore, the market is actually quite saturated, like compared to the other two as well. So at least what we found is when you work with, a few set of people, word of mouth spreads really, really fast, because everybody sort of, knows everybody within the region. And so you can get a reputation really, really quickly if you do good work. Like you get a very good reputation. And so that is usually, a really good thing, because then people automatically, like when they think of, Thoughtworks, they think, we worked with, somebody from here has worked with them. And so, yes, we rely on them and all of that. So that kind of works really well in our favor. But we've seen that works really well within Singapore and Australia. And so the approach here, and one of the things that they also respond to is, Singapore especially, like they want to see how this is being done in like, how is it being done elsewhere? Like they want to know, if we're doing digital transformation or if we're doing something, like how is it being done elsewhere? So the approach that we've found that works really well is to use thought leadership as a way to connect with that audience and to show them that, you're an industry leader in this space. This is what the industry is looking at. This is what the trends are looking at. This is what is happening. And so that's something they respond to really well. And they, it kind of cements the reputation a little bit more there. And and we also see that, they're like the audience from Singapore and Australia, they're more comfortable engaging online. Like we've had no issues or, any hesitancy or anything. Like they're more comfortable engaging online. We've had, conversations with them completely remotely. Like it's been absolutely fine to not physically meet or anything. But I think culturally, that's probably like a difference between these countries between these regions. And that's what we've observed. So the teams have, kind of used similar approaches to sort of engage with those audiences.
Got it. Yeah, that's very interesting. And, it's interesting that you talk about Singapore, wanting to see best practices, and probably, people in Singapore want to see it from other places in the world, right? So
yes.
What is going on in Australia, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in North America. And then that cascades down. And one of the things that we found is countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, they look up to Singapore.
Yes.
Of like what's happening in Singapore. And is that you, have you noticed that as well?
I mean, I don't know if they're looking up at what's happening in Singapore, but I would imagine that for Singapore, the benchmark is, what is happening in North America, what's happening in Australia. And for Indonesia and Thailand, it's more like they want to know what will work for them, so they're more open to looking at what's happening in Singapore because they know that if it works there, it'll probably work for us. So it's yeah, that's what we've observed.
Very interesting. We've talked about a little bit about the tactics that you and the team have used. Is there anything else that comes to mind from tactics that you've seen? You've talked about the online versus offline component, but is there anything else that comes to mind that was very clear, or the differences that you saw across these geographies?
I think one of the things that we found that actually works, I would say this is something that I found like actually as a commonality between all the regions, is whether it's a physical meetup or whether it's virtual, like depending on the cultural nature of that region, they respond really well to a brand name, which means that if you have a thought leader, like a very well-known name with delivering that content either virtually or in person, that's the thing that kind of draws people to the meetup. So if you have the same content that's going to be delivered by someone who's probably not as well known, it'll not draw that many people there. So I know we say content is king, and I know that's the most important part, but especially because of the pandemic, people don't want to spend a lot of time on Zoom. So they really, really want to be able to see that they will get, their time's worth. And so we found that, whichever way you're trying to approach them, if you have a really well-known thought leader behind that actually really draws people to read it. And it's not surprising, I think, anymore. But yeah, that's what I found as sort of common between the regions tactically. And I think that's what we've started using more of. The other thing that we found as a tactic that works is, I think one of the things that, at least in when we kind of get to the bottom of the funnel, people are more open to partnering to actually create content. And that actually we found that people are more open to that than, come and attend an event with us. So like if I say, hey, just come and, like attend this webinar or attend this thing, they're like, okay, I may, but mostly I'll pass it on to my team. But if I offer, like, we want to create this blog with you and we'd like a couple of quotes from you, I think that's, people are at the exec level are more open to that. And I think it's the IKEA effect, the fact that you help people, like when they create something, it becomes more dear to them. So I see that actually sort of has worked really well for us.
I love that. Can you, I mean, you talked about the blog thing. Can you give a little bit more, any particular examples that come to mind with regards to this kind of collaboration?
Sure. So I won't take like names as such, but Thoughtworks, we have a blog that we publish, which is called Insights, and it's open to people from within Thoughtworks to actually write about, and it's a thought leadership gallery as well of people who work with us. So it's also an opportunity for anybody who works in Thoughtworks to kind of have an opinion and share that with the world outside. Sometimes what we do is, while we're writing this, because we work so closely with the customers, it's also an opportunity for them to have their name published, right, in an online publication. So we went in the past, especially when we've had a very, very good working relationship with with a client, we reached out to them and we asked them, would you be open to writing this with us? And what usually happens is there's immediately the concern is of time, right? But then we say that's okay. We'll interview you. We'll get the notes out, and we want your review. We want your thing, and then and then we'll publish it. So what is in it for them is the brand name. Like, hey, I have my name out there. That's very interesting. They also see the marketing team as somebody who cares about their personal brand and their growth, and also the company's brand as well. So that has worked really well. And and we've done it in the past with like a few people, and it has worked really well for us.
Interesting. And has this been something that you've done specifically with existing customers, or have you included people outside of the existing customers of ThoughtWorks, like reaching out cold to people?
No, we've done this only with existing customers.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
No, sounds good. Now, I also want to explore, you've been on this journey of creating the center of excellence within ThoughtWorks for a while now. And I think this is another level of maturity for organizations, right? So organizations usually, if they're multinational, one arm of the organization, if it's EMEA or APAC, or somebody runs a pilot project, then another pilot project pops up in North America, maybe, and another one in EMEA, and then slowly one shares ideas with another one, and then eventually it grows to a point that, hey, we need a center of excellence, and we need to build this out and create a more central source of truth for our ABM efforts. What are some of the mistakes that you've come across while building that at ThoughtWorks?
I feel like, I could share so many.
Let's do the top 2 or 3.
Yeah. But, I actually don't call them mistakes because we've learned from everything, and I think one of the things that and I take accountability for that. So I won't say we, I'll say I. But one of the things that I've learned is the way, and because I've spoken about ROI before, the way we measure our ABM tactics and activities. I think that's been a big learning from a center of excellence perspective, because when it's really attractive to look at, hey, we've had like 150 webinar attendees for this particular webinar that we did, and we spent only so much. And especially when you look at it across regions without context, it can seem that some are doing much more than the others. So you may have a region like China and India where for the same amount of dollars spent, you have way more attendees than a region like Singapore and Australia. Instead of looking at it like that, and of course there's a name for it, that's vanity metrics. So we were looking at what's a good way to kind of qualify this so that it's relevant, but it can also be standardized. And that's really challenging because we're looking at completely different regions. So we've tried, and we're still trying to have extremely relevant metrics. So in that case, we would look at who are the decision makers that have attended or been touched by that event. And so it is very important to qualify that out and look at the seniority of the people and the buying power, and especially in the B2B space, right? Because it's great that you've had 500 people attending, but out of that, who are the people I can really influence, and which one of them will actually be relevant to my pipeline? Because with an organization at a B2B level, you're also influencing not just on buying power, but you're also influencing on the recruitment and supply side, right? So you're doing both sometimes. So especially from a customer marketing perspective, it's really important to kind of qualify the decision makers out. And so that's something that that we've learned to do. And once in a while, we still look at the vanity metrics and feel happy because that's what they're there for. But I think at an ROI level, it's really important to kind of qualify. So that's definitely a learning that we've had. Yeah.
Yeah, the webinar attendees are like the Instagram likes, right? You want to get more, regardless if it's vanity or not. You want more of them, yeah. But you also know that it doesn't necessarily mean much. Anything else that comes to mind?
There is one thing that comes to mind, and I know you talked about it briefly in the beginning. So as a global center of excellence, right? Like I think one thing that we cautiously do not do is create something and then expect everybody to do it the same way. So like we don't have a one size fit all ABM campaign or anything. It cannot be a one size fit all because especially in this context, the APAC regions are so different from each other that it's not just the campaign design, but even the timing that has an impact, right? Because at which time, obviously China has Chinese New Year, which is a very important time in their calendar. And then Australia has the Christmas holidays and everything. And so that's very important in their calendar. And similarly for Singapore, and then similarly for India, which has Diwali. So this is a very obvious thing. I'm talking about the holidays. But apart from there, even like at an account level of the accounts that are important for those regions, timing is really important for them. So when we create something at a global level and say this is, for the regions to execute, I think we have learned to rely and trust the regional teams to execute it at a level that they think is right for the region. And so there's a level of customization that is expected, because ABM is all about customization. But I think that regional context, we can't create something and say, hey, this is for everybody, and everybody across APAC has to do this. So that's just not going to work. So it has to be done at a level that is appropriate for the region and that's appropriate for the accounts within the region.
Got it. Yeah, it makes sense because, the holidays is one thing. Financial years is another thing. There are different times of the year that ends for different countries and even different companies. So I absolutely see what you mean by that. Now, the last question that I want to ask is, what are some of the initiatives that you're looking to implement in the near future in these regions now? What's on the table?
What's on the table? So I love this question because it always, it's something that makes me think about what's to look forward to. And that's always very exciting. It's always very exciting. And one of the things that, that I'm excited about to have within the regions is so far we've got, a robust one-to-one ABM program. And we're looking to scale that and have some, interesting industry ABM programs. So that's something we're looking forward to. The other thing is, ABM is actually, it's so vast, right? And it's a very broad, vast field, and there's so much to learn from, and there's so much strategy behind it. And it's not just what tactics do we execute for this account, but also, helping marketers to work with sales towards like common goals. And traditionally what happens is obviously, sales and demand come up with the goals and say, okay, marketing, we need a newsletter, we need this, we need that, right? But ABM is not about that. ABM is about, these are our goals. Marketing, tell us how can you help us support these goals, right? Like, can you have a way for us, or let's work on a way together. So it's about creating that relationship. One of the things that I'm looking forward to is piloting some very deep strategic ABM workshops for some of our accounts, because I think that addresses what we want to do at two levels. One is at a capability level, like get marketers to understand that, or at least get familiar with, this is the way that ABM can be done. Like we can do these deep strategic sessions. And other thing is to actually, help sales and demand see that as well, because it's not just a marketing responsibility. It is a partnership. So to help them also see that this is possible, and so many things can be possible with good ABM. So let's work towards that. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well.
I love that. I think having an initiative, an actual line item. And we kind of implement this for every single client that we work with, because we kind of been burned by not implementing it. And that's how do you get sales excited, right? What do you need to show them? And you said it perfectly. You're showing them what's possible, and when you show them what's possible, you see this sparkle in their eyes, and they're like, "You could do that for my account." The account that I'm responsible for, and making them see the potential commission from the sales that they're going to land, right? That's just such a it's hard, because I think, just like you said, marketers really need to understand the world of sales to understand what they care about, and sometimes they care about some very selfish things. And usually what is selfish for sales is good for the business to some degree. Well, with a degree of variability, but to some degree, they are motivated by commission that is translated from the sales and understanding that, and then being able to excite the sales team is a big part of ABM success. So I love that you bring that up, and that sounds super cool. Now, before we wrap up, I have a couple of rapid fire questions that I want to ask you, but is there anything that you think, with regards to APAC, the differences, the tactics, the mistakes, the things to keep an eye out for, is there anything that you think I maybe didn't ask that it's worth us exploring before we wrap up this topic?
I think we're good. I think I've shared everything that I needed to. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So let's jump into the rapid fire questions. Okay. So the first thing that I want to ask is, what is one resource? It could be a book, podcast, blog, whatever it is that you've consumed and it's fundamentally changed the way you work or you live.
So that's a tough one because so many things, they change you in little ways, and obviously it's a big world.
But if you want to, I asked that question, and what's the first thing that comes to your mind, Lubaina? You gotta get. Yeah, there we go. There's the first thing.
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind was, it's the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I just finished that. That was so good.
Did you? It is so good, isn't it? And I always hesitate to say it because I don't think it has changed the way I live, but it's definitely changed the way I think.
I love that. I love that you said.
Book, yeah.
I was a bit hesitant of picking it up because everybody was talking about it, and I was like, is this like another like popular psychology thing? And then I was on another podcast, and I was talking to one of our guests. And he recommended the book, and I was like, you know what? If this guy recommends the book, I got to check it out. And I checked it out, and it was good. It was a great book.
It is good. It's good.
Okay.
It is a good book.
Okay. Let's go question number 2. If you could give only one piece of advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
If it was one advice to B2B marketers. So, I have got this advice, and I feel like I need to action it. So that's why I'm going to give this to like the other B2B marketers as well. It's about, when we say marketers need to be data driven, and we need to be, we need to look at data. One of the things that I wish I could have done sooner in my life is to not take no or rejection so personally at a campaign level, because, when something doesn't work as a marketer, because you've designed it and you've created it, sort of feel bad, right? And that's why we kind of rely on vanity metrics and just something to make it sort of seem like a success, because you're like, I worked really hard on this, here you go. This is how it looks now. So I think it's about that. And actually it's something that the sales folks do really well is not take no so personally. And, and they kind of leave it aside, and then they try again and they try again. And I think that's the persistent that's the level of persistence we need for marketing as well. Like, okay, this didn't work. Okay, let's put it aside and let's try again and let's try again.
Got it.
That's what I think. Yeah.
All right. Love it. Question number 3. Who are some of the influencers that you follow in the B2B and the ABM space?
There are so many, actually. There are so many.
Top three that comes to mind. Yeah, gotta go quick.
Top 3. All right. So there is, I think from a marketing perspective, the person whose work I relied on to actually introduce myself to digital marketing was Rand Fishkin of Moz. And I feel like, it's an exercise in content marketing, actually, the kind of work that he's done. It's amazing. And so I really relied on that to get my start. From an ABM perspective, Gemma Davis of ServiceNow, I really love the kind of conversations she has for Center of Excellence. And because that's something that I'm doing currently, I really rely on a lot of thought leadership that she provides. So that's definitely my number 2. And from the perspective of, I'm based in India. So I'm actually always looking to connect with ABMers within India and sort of, follow the ABM journey over here. One of the ABM journeys that really impressed me was what Infosys actually is doing. And so there's Naveen Ram Mohan, who's the VP of marketing at Infosys. And so I listened to a couple of things that they were doing. So that he's another influencer that I follow in this space.
I love it. Last question is, what's something that excites you about B2B today?
This is such an exciting question, actually. So there's obviously, it's an exciting space when you think about it really broadly. I mean, even though sometimes like the day-to-day stuff may seem like frustrating, but I think one of the things that really, really excites me is where we have so many tools actually that are available to us today. And the broadest search in Google has to be marketing tools, right? Like you could just go on and on. There's just so many things that are available to us. And all of that helps us kind of scale marketing for us. So earlier, when it was a challenge to reach out to 1,000 people, now it's nothing. It is so easy for us to reach out to 1,000 people. And so we also, because of these tools, we also get so much insight on, who our audience is and how do we segment them and what do they like, and, what could we pitch to them, or what could we sell to them, all of that. So you get so many things and so many insights and so much analytics, and all of that is available. And yet what we're doing is something so primitive, because what we're actually trying to do is connect with another human being, right? So I think that is really exciting to me, because we have the capacity and the ability to do this at such a huge scale that wasn't possible before, to actually have these connections with another human being, and to kind of, get that, to actually create that relationship. And I think what's really exciting for me is that I don't forget that, like we don't forget that we're actually talking to a human being at the end of this, and we're actually selling to another person. And even though it's B2B or B2C or whatever, like you have a human being at the end of that. And so to remember that, that's who you're talking to. So that's very exciting for me.
I love it. Lubaina, this has been an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed our chat. I think there were a lot of insights that you dropped there, and I think it's a very interesting conversation for a lot of people, considering ABM is so new in the APAC region, and a lot of people have a lot of questions that they're trying to answer. So I really appreciate you jumping on the podcast and having this conversation with me.
Thanks, Shahin. It was absolutely my pleasure. There is nothing I like better than having a conversation about ABM with a colleague. So I love that. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving us that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and sharing the pod with a friend. If you'd like to continue the conversation, please make sure to join the community Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack. growthcolony.org/Slack. Thanks again for all the support, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in the next one.